Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the all-new 2023 Dodge Durango and how they are going to be redesigning the Durango for the 2023 model year. First off, we're going to go over what we know so far, then we're going to get into some light speculation, and then we're going to wrap things up with whether or not you should wait until this new Durango comes out before purchasing one. That being said, let's get into the video. So first off, we have to get into the current Durango just a little bit. So the current Dodge Durango is built on the same platform as the Jeep Grand Cherokee. It is a unibody SUV, and the Durango is basically just a stretched out version of the Grand Cherokee, or maybe the Grand Cherokee is just a squeezed down version of the Durango, whichever way you want to see it. Now the Grand Cherokee sells really well. It sells 300,000 units every single year, and it's just a complete knock out of the park, and yeah, just amazing. The Durango, on the other hand, typically sells less than 100,000 units per year, so not nearly as successful. Now, you guys probably know at this point, right, we have an all-new Grand Cherokee. We've got the Grand Cherokee L, we have the new Grand Cherokee coming out for the 2022 model year, and then on top of that we have the Jeep Grand Wagoneer and the Wagoneer. And this is where the Durango comes in. So for the initial Durango, it was actually a body-on-frame SUV. It wasn't until they started building it alongside the Grand Cherokee that they made it a unibody SUV. Now, there have been a lot of talks of bringing the Durango back to its roots and making it a body-on-frame SUV, building it in the same factory as the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer. And this makes complete sense because the Durango actually kind of slightly gets in the way of the Grand Cherokee from a production standpoint, since they're built in the same factory. And so if they pull the Durango out of that factory and they build it on a different platform, that means that Jeep can produce more Grand Cherokees, and those sell substantially better, and so then they can sell even more of those. And then on the Wagoneer side of things, and Grand Wagoneer, they're so expensive that there's not going to be that many produced just because of the cost of entry, especially for the Grand Wagoneer. And so they'll have all this space, and they'll have all of the resources to build a completely different vehicle, or a whole nother vehicle. And so the new Durango might be built off of the Ram 1500 platform that's been modified for the Wagoneer and the Grand Wagoneer. And so it'd be pretty interesting to see how things would change. Again, there hasn't been a whole lot of information, so that's pretty much what we kind of have more on the confirmed side, is what has been talked about so far. Now let's get, I guess, into the unconfirmed, and I'll kind of just say that right now. It is probably going to be the case that the Durango is going to be a bigger vehicle, so it's not in direct competition with the Grand Cherokee anymore. Because again, we now have the Grand Cherokee L, and so if someone wants to have a third row SUV from one of the Chrysler brands, they're probably going to go for the Jeep because of Jeep styling and because of the Jeep name and everything. It's just the brand that people like to go for. And so I think that they're going to change the Durango and make it kind of like a more affordable Wagoneer, basically. And they'll still obviously do the normal Dodge stuff where it'll be more performance oriented. And so I imagine what they'll do is similar to what they have with the current Durango. You'll have an entry-level engine, most likely a V6, and then go all the way up to something crazy like the Hellcat powered Durango that we've had for the current generation, which is just absolutely insane. Love the car, obviously. But here's most likely what is going to happen is we'll get this new Durango, and they'll initially probably release this with the base level powertrains, kind of what they're doing with the Jeep Grand Cherokee L, and then also what they are going to be doing with the new Jeep Grand Cherokee when that comes out. And so we'll probably get like a hybrid version of the V6, or maybe we'll just get the current V6 we have now with the e-torque. We'll see what happens there. And then there obviously are some new engines that have been released. So we have that new 4xe engine that is in the Jeep Wrangler that they're going to put in the Grand Cherokee, and so they might also put this into the Durango. We'll see what happens there, but again, I'm sure they'll put a higher performance engine in it. We've got the 6.4 Hemi that's going to be going into the Grand Wagoneer, and so I'm sure that they'll offer that engine with the Durango. And then will we get a Hellcat powered Durango with this Ram 1500 platform? I don't know. We'll see what happens. Emissions restrictions are getting really strict, and so it's hard for car makers to build cars like that anymore. So I don't know if it's going to come out soon enough for us to be able to see that. Time will tell. Now, will this be the size of a Grand Cherokee, or will it be bigger? I think they're going to make it bigger. I think they're just going to basically take the Wagoneer platform and just do Dodge sheet metal. I don't think they're going to really shrink it because, again, it's already built off of a truck-based platform, and the Wagoneer and Grand Wagoneer, they already had to modify the platform to make it smaller to fit with those vehicles, and so making it even smaller, right, that's a little bit of a squeeze. I was going to say stretch, but they're making it anyways. All stupid jokes aside, I think it's going to be the same size as the Wagoneer most likely, and so it'll just be basically a performance oriented version of the Wagoneer from a styling perspective. It won't necessarily have more performance, it'll just look like it has more performance. That's kind of what Dodge does, but obviously, again, tons of speculation at this point, but that's kind of what we know so far, and then again, a little bit of speculation. Now, should you look into buying this new Dodge Durango? And here's what I'd have to say. It depends on what you're looking for. So if they do go the route of making this a body-on-frame SUV, so it's a truck-based SUV again, then obviously if you're into towing and all that kind of stuff, then it'll be fantastic for that. And if you want more space, then it'll have more space if it's being built off of that same platform, because the Wagoneer is bigger than the current Durango and it's bigger than the new Grand Cherokee L. Now, aside from that, if you're into like the performance oriented driving, then you're probably going to want to try to pick up an SRT Durango with the current generation, or a Hellcat Durango if you can find one. They're pretty hard to find, but if you can find one and you want like a performance Durango, I would go with one of those, because there's no guarantee we're going to get anything like that with this new generation, just because of emissions restrictions and because of the timeline that we're dealing with this new Durango. Now, aside from that, some other benefits I see with this new Durango is the fact that it's on that 1500 platform. You guys know I'm a huge fan of that platform for numerous reasons. So first off, that platform just feels great from a ride quality perspective. I don't know what magic they put into it, but it's just amazing. Just go drive a new Ram 1500 and you will understand what I'm talking about. It feels like a luxury car. And so if they put this into the Durango, it feels substantially better than the current generation from a ride quality standpoint. And on top of that, with the modified version for the Wagoneer, they're actually giving it independent suspension, so it doesn't have a solid rear axle anymore. And so the Wagoneer is probably going to drive even smoother than the 1500 on that same platform. And so you can imagine if they use that same platform for the Durango with the independent suspension, no solid rear axle, then it's going to ride even smoother. So I think that is pretty cool to hear. Now, moving from that, obviously it's going to have nicer tech, it's going to have a nicer interior as well compared to the current generation, so if that stuff's important to you, then it'll be worth waiting. And I guess back on the capability side of things, I'm sure that they'll make it so that this tows more than the current Durango, and it'll definitely have a higher payload capacity being built off of that platform, being a body on frame SUV. And so overall, it'll just be a more capable vehicle. It'll be larger, it'll ride smoother, it'll have a nicer interior, everything will be nicer about it. It just wouldn't have the same performance capabilities as the current Durango, because it's going to be a bigger vehicle, and there's, again, no guarantee we're going to get the crazy powertrains that we have in the current Durango in this new Durango. And so just depending on what you're looking for out of the vehicle will determine which route you want to go. But yeah, that's going to sum things up for today's video with the new 2023 Dodge Durango. As always, if you're stopping for the first time, I'd really appreciate it if you'd subscribe. And then if you do feel like my videos are of value to you, I'm going to include a link to my Patreon in the description down below. I'd really appreciate your support over there. I'll see you guys.